Recently, I spent 5 days traveling around the South Island of New Zealand, and in this video, I want to share some of my favorite images created on this trip, all shot on the Canon R5 Mark II. I've enjoyed making this style of video previously, chatting through the photos, the story behind them, and what I like about each of them. It was a bit of a different trip actually for my friend Dan's Bucks party or stag do, whatever your part of the world calls it, but as a group of photographers, we basically just drove around epic places taking photos. So my kind of bucks. It was more about just hanging out. So I hope you enjoy this style of video and some of the images. I have them all on my phone here ready to go. So let's jump in. So we flew into Queenstown, honestly one of the nicest places you can fly into, basically landing here between the mountains. These are just some of the snaps I took out of the window on the way in. So we picked up our car, which was actually a huge van, and headed into town. A pretty chilled afternoon, we headed down to the lake, took a few photos here, and also ate the famous Ferg burger. A few snaps by the lake. I really like some of these, just simple moments captured, especially this one. These were all taken on the 24mm prime. We then headed to a deer park, which has some really nice views for sunset. Unfortunately, we arrived slightly late, catching the last of the golden light just before the place actually closed for the day. Short-lived, but still a beautiful evening. While hanging out at the Airbnb, we did also try our luck at some astro. I got this time lapse, but didn't quite find any frames I'd loved from this viewpoint. The next day, we drove from Queenstown and started making our way towards Mount Cook, with a few quick stops along the way. We also stopped at Lake Wanaka to check out the famous Wanaka tree. It was pretty busy here at this time during the bright, harsh sunlight. We took a few photos before jumping back in the van and heading down towards Mount Cook. Next stop, we made it down to Lake Bukaki, a salmon farm for lunch, which already had some really nice views of Mount Cook across the lake. Harsh light, but something I typically don't mind in my photos. Without any expectation, captured a few shots here I didn't mind. So I had my 70-200 out, quite a bit on this trip again. After checking into our new Airbnb, we actually made our way back to this area by the lake, found another viewpoint here for sunset. This image here is actually one of my favorites from the trip. Always loving these nice natural moments and some really nice afternoon light. I also got quite a few of the gang here that I really like as well. And of course, the whole gang in action here too. A pretty beautiful sunset before heading back to our comm at Lake Taupo. That evening, we also tried our luck at some more astro. So it isn't the most ideal time of year for the Milky Way to line up, but we still got some epic conditions for this time of year, shooting by this famous church at Lake Taupo. So again, getting some use out of a lens I don't use a lot these days, which is my wide angle zoom. And another beautiful evening, really getting lucky with conditions so far. The next day was all about Mount Cook. During the day, we visited this famous viewpoint of Mount Cook and this windy road along the lake. Again, some pretty harsh light, getting quite a few variations at this spot. I particularly like this one of the biker coming up the hill, but a few others here as well. Later that day, we actually hiked the Hooker Valley Trail, which is a really famous one at Mount Cook, with some really epic views all along the way. A relatively easy hike, but a really rewarding one. Here are some of the shots from along the trail. Again, really lucky with conditions and another beautiful evening. This one, as you get to the end of the trail, probably one of my favorites here, Hojay just walking up the hill. So we're pretty late back to our Airbnb that evening after a long day and ready for a pretty chilled one the next day. But it was meant to be a long day of driving, but because we split it up between the 6 of us, it does go pretty quickly. we drove back through Queenstown just for a quick stop before driving on to Tianu. No real photos from this day, but we did check out the luge in Queenstown, which was incredibly fun as well. The next day we had a very early start. We had to make our way to Milford for the first boat tour that we had booked. We had some pretty moody conditions on the way, which actually turned into some really torrential rain by the time we got to Milford. One thing about Milford in the rain is you get these little waterfalls just forming everywhere. So you almost want a bit of rain, but unfortunately, since it was so heavy, the drive-in was slightly less rewarding than usual, missing out on some of the epic views as they were kind of stuck behind some thick cloud. It was absolutely bucketing down by the time we got to the car park, and we got drenched just walking from the car park to the visitor center, ready to catch our boat. Once we were on the boat, this is where putting up with the rain made it really worth it. Some incredible conditions cruising around the Sound in Milford, such an epic and fun experience in the rain. I got so many of these moments out on the deck in the rain, some really moody conditions as well. All of these I shot on my 50mm, I just kept this on the entire time. Very thankful for good weather sealing, as I did spend a lot of time in the rain here. Got absolutely drenched. I could probably show an endless amount of images here. I did take a lot, but as I said, just really enjoyed the experience and enjoyed capturing it. So that's pretty much an epic conclusion to our time in New Zealand. We did cover a lot of ground, but you can see a lot in the South Island in a short space of time if you're willing to put up with the driving. So I hope you enjoyed this style of video. I will catch you in the next one. Actually be in Vietnam, so excited for that. Bye for now.